Major funding for these broadcasts is made possible by grants from Capital One Bank, New York Community Bank, Eastern Consolidated, M&T Bank, Sterling National Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Customers Bank, Ariel Property Advisors, Dime Community Bank. Additional funding is made possible by grants from AM Trust Title, AVR Realty Company, Avison Young, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chase Commercial Mortgage, Citizens Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Colliers International NYC, Cohen Equities, Collins Building Services, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handler Real Estate Organization, Handro Properties, Hodges Ward Elliott Inc., Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, Madison Realty Capital, Matone Group, Mercantile Bank, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Group, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Meringoff Family Foundation, the Moynihan Organization, Moynihan Capital Partners, and these friends.
November 16, 2001. Live from Shallot's Kosher Restaurant in the Sony Center. A show called The Stoller Report? Or In Conversation with Mike Stoller? That was the show, and a lot has happened since that period of time. So today, I've assembled this group of business leaders who are going to provide their thoughts on what has happened to the entire real estate community since 2001. My guests include the legendary Alan V. Rose, who is the dean in this group of real estate leaders.
You try to say I'm old.
I said you're the dean. Who's the chairman and CEO of AVR Realty. Rick Lyon, who is the executive vice president and the head of commercial real estate for Capital One Bank, which did not even exist in 2001. Peter Habsburg, who is the co-founder, chairman, and CEO of Eastern Consolidated. And last but not least, who was a young banker in 2001, who has progressed to the area executive and head of the real estate committee?
Real estate business, yeah.
Peter Darcy of M&T Bank. So since, you got that chair over there, what have you seen over the last 17 years? Well, what has changed, okay? Because, if we look at certain of the businesses that you are in and everyone else, 17 years ago, we had 40,000 hotel rooms in the city of New York. Now we have 110,000 rooms. We didn't have something called Airbnb. The world has changed. What are you seeing?
Well, obviously, everything kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Not necessarily better. In those years, there was a great need for more hotels. There was a great need for more housing. There was a need for everything. And we had a little terrible event, as we all know, and slowly but surely after that, it dragged itself out of the misery and the pessimism and everything, and raised buildings and everything was built.
Has it been easier to build since 2001, or as Rick was saying prior in the green room, has the world got better after the recession of 2000? We have two periods, 2001 to the recession, then the recession to the current day. Where have we seen the major developments? Where are the things? Peter?
Well, I remember, after the accident, there was the top office leasing brokers in New York swore that from then on, the second floor of office buildings was going to be worth more than the top floors, and that lasted for a couple of months.
Right, and then you had people saying they'd never relocate or live in downtown or work in downtown.
Of which there was about 20,000 pioneers at the time. Now there's over 60. But I also remember real estate values being shocked for about 6 months. We did a deal at 90 West Street, which was damaged by the towers. It was and is 350,000 feet of office, and it was emptied out and had a fire in it, and the insurance company, Aegon, took it over, and no one wanted to buy it. We finally made a deal for $12 million, or $35 a foot, 2 weeks after the attack, and then with BRAC Capital. And BRAC then sold a 50% interest not 18 months later for $200 a foot, same building. So,
but what is happening, especially since Eastern has progressed also? As I was saying on a show recently, the 5 families, the major New York real estate families, are no longer the holder of the major buildings today. I mean, you have investors from different countries, different worlds, private equity funds, sovereign wealth funds.
well, that was the last place they wanted to invest if they could do something, otherwise. But, as Alan had pointed out, as development progressed and, land sales, started to pick up in value, apartment buildings were built, and, it became a real community. And the 9/11 site is the second most trafficked tourist attraction in New York City now, of all things.
Amazing.
Now, you were at First Union at that time. So where have you seen it as a banker, as a seasoned banker? And also you had changed your career a little bit. At that time, you were more in the middle market, and then you joined more in...
Yeah, and I came in 2001, I came into real estate, right? From corporate banking and investment banking. I think there's really 2 separate periods, Michael. There was the pre the Great Recession, so from 9/11 through, was really a period of irrational, exuberant credit available, money, right? And it was CMBS, and it was drove values to a point that we ended on home values till we ended up in a recession. Today, I think it is really interesting. I think there's 3 major things that are happening. One, the millennials, and by 2020, the millennials will be about 40% of the workforce. They have created urbanization. People no longer want my dream, a big house in the suburbs with a half an acre or an acre of grass to cut. They want to live, work, and play in a city, or even create a little city out in the suburbs where they can live, work, and play. So that has been a major change and will continue, which is why apartments are doing so well versus single families. Okay, but it's not. I don't think we'll see the move in single family. Second thing is, let's call it Amazization or whatever, right? You've got all the .com, the ability to buy online. Now you have warehouses that need to be in Long Island City. They need to be all over to get quick delivery, same day delivery. And that's creating a whole change in retail and a whole change in distribution. And the last thing I think is really healthy for the market is you've moved from, and I'm going to take the chance of saying, you move from dumb money to smart money. You call it shadow banking, I'll call it the debt funds and all the other capital that's available, debt capital, are investors that are holding that debt. They're actually making really rational decisions around a little more leverage than the banks will take. And I think that is a very healthy way and has kept us in a pretty good stead in terms of where capital is today. Versus CMBS, which is really simply, whatever I can sell, I'll make a loan on.
But don't we still have CMBS?
We do, and it's an important market. I don't want to trash CMBS and say that's not an important market. It still is, but that serves only now a small portion between the agencies, which provide steady capital for the multifamily business, the banks, which again continue to provide the majority of capital to real estate, and then you have all of the debt funds and alternative lenders that I think provide a little extra juice, if you would, to their money, but they do it in a very smart way, and they hold their debt. They actually make their investments and hold it, not playing with depositors' money, they're playing with their investors' money. I think it's a real rational business.
Peter, what do you see?
Yeah, I agree with Rick's comments. I'd add to that for much of the period in that first phase, as well as in the second phase, we've had historically low interest rates. So when it comes to having a conversation as a backdrop or a context for commercial real estate assets, the appreciation in that low interest rate environment has been magnified or amplified, and you throw in the globalization and the flow of equity, large amounts of equity in the money coming from Asia and the Middle East. A place like New York, you're taking solid fundamentals, an expanding marketplace, low interest rates, and a lot of capital flowing in and chasing deals, and a lot more institutional money. To your point, there was a lot of private ownership in New York, unlike other markets which are more institutionally dominated. But that's created in that window a lot of years where there's been very strong stimulus.
If you look at the REITs in 2001, S.O. Green, who is the biggest REIT landlord today of office buildings, they were a B REIT company. They had B properties. They didn't have A properties. You didn't have HNA. You didn't have Oxford Property Group. You didn't have all these companies. You didn't have a lot of these private equity funds. Savannah wasn't around. Many of these companies who have become major players. Alan, when did you go out to your first development in Long Island? You were a Brooklyn boy, but you went to the suburbs.
Well, I went to the suburbs from Brooklyn along with 4 million other guys who came home from the war. They had the GI Bill, they had FHA financing, and the Long Island Expressway wasn't even built. It was up to Valley Stream. And as it went east out to Montauk, we followed it. All the builders followed it. We went from Valley Stream to Baldwin. We built over there, and we built Massapequa. And all of this land in Long Island, it was nothing. It was 10,000 an acre, 5,000 an acre. And on the land where you wouldn't want to build houses because there was too many cars on the highway, those became shopping centers.
You bring up the shopping center, and Rick brings up the Amazon effect. Shopping centers continue to exist. As a lender today, both of you still lend on shopping centers, right? But you lend in a more conservative basis. And Peter, shopping centers being sold?
Yeah, not that much. We're more New York City based, but to your point, all our deals since 09 and 10 have had 40, 50% equity. So that, really changed from the 1990s when the banks suffered, and after 09, a lot of the lenders kicked the can down the road, and it turned out to be the exact right thing to do.
So people always come up to me and say, where are the best opportunities in today's market? It's the crystal apple's over there. They're not in my hands, fortunately, and I don't have that crystal apple. Alan, you've been around. Peter, you're very intent, especially besides Easton Consolidated. You're also on the mortgage committee of M&T Bank, and you're a lender, a very active lender. Where do you feel comfortable? Where is the next emerging market? Is it Harlem? Is it Inwood over here? Is it more of Suffolk County, Alan, or is it more Westchester?
It all depends on what you're doing. If you're a shopping center, which we primarily were shopping center builders for many, many, many years, nobody wants shopping centers today. As you say, the internet can deliver goods cheaper, faster. Tenants that used to take 100,000 feet now take 50. Tenants that took 50 take 25. You multiply that by every shopping center in the United States,
in reality,
and you're heading for over the cliff is what's going to happen to the shopping center.
Planet Fitness, gyms, and other people are taking over some of these shopping centers.
And also, I remember the day when I first got into real estate is we didn't like restaurants. We liked hard goods and things like that. Now, if you look at what shopping centers are really, they're lifestyle centers, and it's full of restaurants. I'm a Philadelphian, but there's a Philadelphia retail center that was just built by JBG that sold for more than any other retail center ever in the suburbs of Philadelphia. So it's the best of times and the worst of times, depending on what your mix is in retail.
Not all shopping centers are alike.
Right.
Today, if you have a grocery-anchored shopping center, like the one we have in Portchester with Whole Foods and everything, that center will be successful no matter what. Or if you have a center, like we have a 1,200,000 square foot center in San Antonio, where we have a category killer in every category, that center will be there. Nobody's going to build another one like that.
That was an old Kimco center. Right?
What's that?
That was an old Kimco center?
Right, we bought it from Kimco.
And 20 years ago, would you ever put a Whole Foods and then apartments on top of it? Probably not.
In
But
the
now
city, in
you-
the, in the
in the
city, yes.
city.
Yes.
But now you do it.
Not in the suburbs.
But
Now
if-
you do it in the suburbs.
I still remember when I was used to write for the New York Sun, and I poo-pooed the Time Warner Center because vertical retailing
Never worked.
It never worked. Okay, you know, you had the E.J. Corvette's location, which was then converted into vertical
Herald
retail.
Center.
Herald Center was a failure. Trump Tower was a failure. And how, you know, in a neighborhood that really didn't have a district to speak of, you build this center, and they did come to that situation. I mean, as a lender, when people came to you with the Hudson Yards over there, how do you look at it?
Again, Hudson Yards is adding.
No,
up.
not. I'm talking when it,
Initially?
Initially, as opposed to today. Today, you have all these tenants. It's a different world.
Right. It's a different world. Initially, you know, again, with skeptical eyes, to think that you know, that the city needed all that office, that the market was going to move from. I mean, I was very comfortable in sort of the lower Manhattan, but was it going to actually move to the west, and was it going to move to that area of town? Maybe that's why I'm a banker and not a builder. I'm not as visionary as that, but I think that was real pioneering. But what great vision to have. But it had to be not just office. If you notice, they've got retail, they've got everything over there. And that really is the key to success, is creating a district where people can live, work, and play.
But I believe one of the interesting things that you have to have in today's market is you need the convenience of mass transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Hudson Yards, even though they have only the 7 train, you're not that far away from Penn Station and the Port Authority.
Right.
So that helps over there. And in other markets, you know, in the Queens market, today they're going to be in Willets Point, which is going to be a 30 to a 40-minute commute, depending on they're building affordable housing over there, as opposed to building a shopping center because the market has changed. How do you look at the hospitality market today with the large number of rooms and with the Airbnb?
Yeah, so there's 3 things that concern us about the hospitality market. The oversupply, and regionally in New York, there's been a lot built, especially of a limited service nature, in a short amount of time, more than was needed. Airbnb is a factor that's growing, but it really kills the compression nights where they have the chance to raise rates and make a lot of money. So it's not just the total numbers, but it's the impact on where they're making big bucks. It's hurting them. And then the dollar, which has been a little bit of a headwind on tourism, but tourism counts have held up really firm in New York, and New York as a destination has been good. So I would say everybody in the lending space is very cautious about New York City, but that's when it comes to having special projects, and we'll still look at it. We're financing the TWA at Kennedy. That's an example of
But that's a unique,
unrelated, unique thing, right? But there's
unique
good deals
property.
in tough
Okay,
markets.
Now, something that we didn't have in 2001, we didn't have industrial properties that were converted to offices. All of a sudden, that world changed. How do you see that market? Because today, I see a higher need for industrial property than some of this conversion property.
Probably the hottest category of product on the market right now. 10 years ago, it was all $40 a foot, and now it's $250 to $300. And as Alan had pointed out, everyone wants to be in the last mile, and there's limited amounts of the inventory, so the prices have skyrocketed.
Shopping centers soon to become.
I'd like to say one more thing about the hotels. In addition to what Peter said, everything he said is so. I've looked at 25 different deals for hotels in New York City. And the problem is, of course, the overbuilding, but the costs of operating, of unions in New York City, and the cost of operating a hotel is double what it would be, let's say, in Pennsylvania or anywhere else in the country. And there's a lot of new people that were never in the hotel.
But, you know, relating that just in general, in 2001, a builder in New York would never think, a major family or a large builder would never think of doing an open shop job with union and non-union people. Today, some of the largest buildings and developments in the city of New York have open shop because of the union situation that you brought out of the cost structure.
He's talking about operating basis too.
I'm
though.
talking
I'm
operating.
No,
The
I'm
operating
talking
cost is...
No, the operating cost is 40% more. Something which I believe is really going to, especially since Alan and I and maybe someone else here, might be considered baby boomers. One of the areas, and I know that Peter was very influential on this, is the senior living, assisted care development, like what you did on 56th Street over there.
56 and Lex, where Hines and Welltower, the healthcare REIT recognized a need in Manhattan. There was no assisted living facilities of any quality. A lot of people aging out on 5th Madison, Central Park West, and their kids are in the city, and there's nowhere to put them. And Hines and Welltower, identified this need, and their first project now is going up 56 and Lex, and more are planned.
It's almost like hotels. We've been doing that for a long time too. Anybody can get a mortgage. We'll build an ALR, because on paper it looks like a great business. So, and what they do, they go to an area, they figure out how many people in the proper age bracket live there, and they take a percentage of those people and say that these people will reside at an ALR. But they don't take the cheapness factor into consideration. All the statistics go down the drain when the kid says, I'm not paying $6,000 a month for my mother or my father. Come live in my basement. And that,
Okay, but-
you're laughing, but that's an important part of it.
But you know what? But part of that basis is someone who bought a home 40 years ago in Long Island or Westchester, and they sell the home, they have that money, after the first $500,000 on the income tax situation, to give them a quality of life. People want to stay in the city, and I believe we've seen just the beginning with the Welltower over there, and also there's another one on 92nd Street and 2nd Avenue being built.
And on West End Avenue, there's the old Esplanade.
Right, the Esplanade also.
Right, which we've have a long relationship with. But I thought where you were going, which is another good point, is that a lot of people get seduced by, okay, there's a lot of demand for senior housing, and it is like a hotel. It's all about services. Right. It's making sure the people really understand that business before they go into it. Same with student housing. Student housing sounds like a great way to make an apartment building worth 25%, 30% more. Yeah. It's a completely different business. So you got to make sure as a lender, we're picking the people that are running it and what their experience is versus just oh boy.
You bring up a great point, okay? Here's the question. The two of you are lenders, and you're a part-time lender because you're on the mortgage committee. How do you determine that new millennium who's coming into the business, who said, I want to be a developer? How do you get comfort to give that person money today to lend? You're working, you're a fiduciary. How do you decide that this person is a young Alan Rose, okay? Somebody who starts today. How do you make a determination?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And it's been important to us. The easy answer is to say, well, they don't have enough experience, we're going to avoid them. But we've actually been pretty careful by structuring loans with a lot of equity. Typically, they'll have partners that can put it in, or we'll have to come up with a structure to approach it conservatively and find people who are the next Alan Rose, where there are some
But how
talent.
do you sit there? I mean,
You start really carefully.
It's very difficult.
It is a very difficult question. But there is, again, I'll go back to some of the alternative lenders, and whether it's a Brookfield, who we get a lot of comfort that they can actually step up, add a lot of value. They're not just a investment bank that's going to throw money at somebody, but actually can add a lot of value. And they can also step in. So often it's partnering, it's helping people partner up with good equity.
So you want a
sources.
young person to have a good equity source like a Brookfield,
Or
a Heitman or somebody.
it could be a subordinate piece.
Yeah,
It could
a
be-
subordinate piece of my loan. It could be a lot of different things where you've got the backing of not just the financial backing, but the expertise for someone to be able to really help.
I was going to say, you guys wouldn't do this unless the person had significant construction experience, right?
Well, I mean, that's the question. Is the first time somebody's going to build, or the first time they're on their own, they don't have substantial. Listen, if I see Jeff Levine, I can say, a dozen buildings he's built, or more that he's built. I know he can.
But how
get a
do you
project
feel
done.
comfortable
But how did you
with a
lend to him
27-year-old
30 years ago?
Yeah.
25?
I can tell you this, when I was 25 and didn't have any money whatsoever and very little background, I went to the Franklin National Bank, and the president of the bank was Paul Presswimmer. And he spoke, he said, I only got 5 minutes, to talk to you. I said, well, I got this beautiful little project. I'm going to build these houses in Baldwin, Long Island. And all of a sudden, a half hour went by, and I'm explaining to him what it costs and my dream and how this is going to work. I'm going to work 24 hours a day. He loaned me my first $1,000. $1,000. Put me through hell before I did it. And then, of course, after that, we went on and on and on and on and on.
So where are the opportunities? 2018. Where are the opportunities in real estate, Peter?
I think if any place that to me screams that there's still a need, it's in affordable housing, workforce housing, Queens, the Bronx, areas that still have places to develop. There's still a housing crisis regionally, and there are a lot of subsidies. The low-income housing tax credit got preserved in the tax bill, even though the tax rate went down. It's less.
What about
effective.
what about Staten Island? I hear all these boroughs. I don't hear Staten Island. Alan, you never went to Staten
Maybe
Island.
the wheel.
I built 3,000 houses in Staten Island. I built a shopping center. I still own a shopping center in Staten Island. And Staten Island was like a third world country. You know, nobody wanted to live there. But they got blue-collar people, hard-working, nice people. The houses we sold were like $75,000 in those days, talking about 20 years ago. And it's still one of the best markets. You never see a failure or a bankruptcy in Staten Island. These are real people.
Right.
And
the market has been there.
And the market has been.
But the investor interest has always been pretty.
What is that?
The investor interest has always been pretty shallow out there.
Yeah.
Which might be good.
It's not a beautiful place, let's put it that way. But I thought it had a lot of promise. And those people have to have houses too. You know,
Hey,
it's
look,
not like
the
everybody's
community
going
is
to
there.
move into $1 million house in Great Neck.
You know, the market has changed. You know, the aging millennium. You know, the baby boomer. So I think, you know, in summation, we've seen, as I said on my 1000 show, we've seen a lot of things change since 9/11, and it still looks, the outlook. If I had the apple over there, it would be shiny, and the opportunities are still there, with interesting people. And I hope that in the years to come, you all come back, especially my friend Mr. Alan Rose.
We're going to come back for your 4,000th show.
Yeah.
I'd like you to come back. Live and be well. Rick Lyons, Peter Hopsberg, and Peter Darcy, and see you, and thanks for being a 1000 show.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations,
Congratulations.
Michael.